All right guys, welcome back to the 31 Days of J-Tober. Today we got a graphics card that was sent to me by a fellow content creator and XO-seer, Brian from BP Customs. So this is a Zotac amp 780 Ti. And I recently sent him a motherboard that he was reaching out for people online to like, hey, does anyone have an X99 OC Champion from Gigabyte? And I was like, yeah, I got one. You got anything cool to trade? Before I tell you about what we're gonna do today, I'm gonna show you something else he sent that was really cool. This is an old school ATI graphics card. I forget the exact model number of this guy. Geez, I feel like a pleb. It's from 2010. But anyway, this is an old ATI. Prior to AMD buying them, dual GPU, or dual die GPU. So I'm kind of curious as to if this is something that we can still even use in the year 2021, 11 years old, because it's around the same era from when Bulldozer and all that stuff was a thing. But today, we got a 780 Ti that works as long as you don't play games on it. So we'll talk about what that means. We'll show it in demonstration. I know people have experienced this with their cards, and we'll see if we can't fix it. The inventor of NAND flash memory that changed life as we knew it, Kioxia is a leading provider of flash memory and SSDs. Kioxia offers a line of innovative NVMe SSDs for many environments, including mobile compute, high-performance gaming PCs, and hyperscale and enterprise data centers. Leading-edge PCIe Gen 4 performance SSDs for AMD EPYC and Intel Xeon-based servers with PCIe 4.0 technology offer extreme speeds with unparalleled reliability, making Kioxia the obvious choice for those who demand excellence for any use case. To see everything that Kioxia America has to offer, follow the sponsored link in the description below. Okay, first and foremost, it's funny how much cards have changed over the years. It's super light. Metal shroud, 3 fans. This was a pretty killer card back in the day. Now, Brian thinks that this might have received 12 volt to the die, which is what killed it. I personally don't believe that's the case. Specifically because of what I've learned through XOC and being coached specifically by Vince with EBGA or Kingpin himself. What it was explained to me is that the die is either dead or not. Not that it works in one mode and not another, which is what we're dealing with. With 2D mode, like desktop, he says it works, but as soon as you fire up a game, it just instantly crashes. And I experienced something similar to that after I lapped the die on the Kingpin card, to where I was getting like crazy crashing right away and turned out to be a bad mount. But I thought maybe something had happened to the die with all the overclocking, that it was working fine on desktop and then wouldn't in the XOC LN2 conditions. And Vince was like, no, that's not how this works. The die, if it's dead, it's dead. It won't work in any mode whatsoever. Brian said he went through and he did some voltage checking and everything checks out in terms of voltage delivery. So I'm going to basically just start here and I'm gonna see what we get, see what the symptoms are, what we get, and I'm gonna try some BIOS flashing and such on this to see if that'll work. I have no doubt that's something Brian probably tried, but because of the availability of the BIOS up online, we can go up onto Tech Power Up. I'm sure we can find this exact BIOS, download NVLink, see if we can't get this to flash. So I got a 3080 here because we'll probably end up having to use this to download all our utilities and stuff if this doesn't boot. But anyway, first boot, fans are turning immediately. You know what's interesting? This sort of predates when like lighting on cards was a thing. Look at that. There's like no lighting on this card whatsoever. That's so weird. Do we get an image? That's gonna be the first and foremost thing. So this is the Corsair Xenon monitor. Everything's booted up, but we're not getting an image. Huh. He did say he gets an image out of it. What's happening here? We got a white light. DisplayPort, no signal. Huh. Maybe we have to try this with HDMI? Is that in all the way? Yeah, it's in all the way. God, look at the flex on that. Okay. It booted to the OS, and the way I can tell that is if it was stuck in some sort of a BIOS screen or a post error message, hitting the power button would immediately turn it off. But I touched it, yeah, and see I touched power, which is set in Windows right now to just turn off the system. Let me try HDMI. I wonder if we have a dead DVI port. DisplayPort, no signal. Oh, okay, so booted with HDMI. So right off the bat, we have a bad DVI port. Off to a great start. Oh, yeah, I saw a little flicker light. Yeah, it completely restarted. It just rebooted. And that was the second it went to initialize And Windows right there. Actually, I remember now. Brian said it works in safe mode, not in a normal mode. Oh look, it fully booted. Look, we're in the operating system right now. Because remember we showed in our Corsair review about this panel. Look, we're in the menu right now. Interesting. GPU does not recognize, obviously, because it would be right there. Okay, it just initialized right there. The light turned on. Okay, we got an image. This is like one of those demon cards that you just are like. Okay, so what we experienced already so far: DisplayPort, no image; HDMI, a complete freeze with the image going away with the weird zzz line that went through, a restart, and now it's working. We're clearly a step farther by doing nothing than Brian said. In fact, let me read Brian's DM to you. So Brian said, I have a 780, but weirdly, I need it for a video soon. I do have a 780 Ti, but it's mildly broken. And that's what already intrigued me, mildly broken. He said, I was going to try and repair it. Let me see what I can do. He said, it fails when the driver is initialized. So we already saw that once, the flicker. So you can post, get into BIOS, and even load into Windows as long as there's no driver installed. We have a driver installed. No, we don't. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, we do not have an NVIDIA driver right now. So it uninstalled itself. Already there was a weird issue there, right? The OS was able to somehow uninstall the driver, so now we have an image. Okay. But once you try to install the driver, it crashes. The system stays on, but there's no display out. We've already seen that. I'm worried it somehow shorted a power stage and got 12 volts to the core. That's not the case, or it wouldn't be working at all. You got it for the cheap, so he figured he'd try and diagnose it, but I'm not sure it's usable in a real sense, unless your workload is just D around in safe mode. Took it apart and probed a bunch of spots, couldn't find any obvious short. The die also wasn't physically damaged, so I didn't see any hot spots on the SMD. Put it back together, and it's still exhibiting the same behavior. We'll post, load BIOS, splash screen will load, Windows in safe mode, with no drivers installed. As soon as drivers are present, the card black screens. Okay, based on what he's saying, it's just sort of causing issues by installing it. I want to start with a BIOS flash, because that's not one thing he mentioned here. If you guys aren't aware of this, and by the way, moving forward, if you guys do any sort of BIOS flashing, you are completely on your own. However, moving forward, Tech PowerUp essentially does have a collection of all the VBIOS or VGA BIOS that you can find for just about any graphics card. So the card I have right here, this is the Zotac GTX 780 Ti AMP Edition, 3GB, 384-bit GDDR5. Part number is ZT-70504-10P. So we can actually find that particular card if we wanted right here. 575 megahertz core clock. My, how things have changed. Boost clock of 1058. Holy cow, things have changed. But anyway, moving forward. So that's the BIOS right there. I want to see if I can find that exact part number though, 7504-10P. One of the crazy things is that you can actually sometimes flash a different version BIOS from a different manufacturer onto a card. However, I've actually bricked a 780 Ti specifically or 780, specifically by putting the wrong BIOS on it. It was a different revision. A die, or A revision, B revision of the same die, that was not compatible. That's why I say do all this at your own risk. Not getting a Tech PowerUp hit for that specific number, because it probably isn't gonna matter at this point. So let me download the BIOS, let me download the NV flash and all that for it. Here's the card information right here. GPU name is GK110B. Remember what I just said about A and B? It almost makes me want to take the card apart and make sure I don't have an A. Or this card could be older or newer than the A, which means they're all B die. Things you have to pay attention to when you're doing this sort of flashing. Okay, so I downloaded a couple things. I downloaded a BIOS right here, which was the only one I found on Tech PowerUp. I downloaded NV Flash. I'm not sure if this version is going to work. I might have to find an old one. But I installed GPU-Z. So this is GK110 revision B1. So like I said, we only have B1s there. Release date, November 7, 2013. Here's our BIOS version, 8080-34001D. But here's what's interesting. Memory type, GDDR5 Hynix, bus width unknown, bandwidth unknown, memory size unknown. Or 0. So I'm starting to wonder if there's an issue with the memory on this card. So that's the nice thing about GPU-Z. You can find all sorts of stuff about your card just by, look, 0 megahertz clock, 0 megahertz memory clock, CPU temperature is reading out. So clearly there's some issues here with the card simply not responding in certain areas. That could be because the driver's not running. There's no driver right now, it's just basic VGA. But that's fine. The reason why I downloaded this is I'm going to save this BIOS. Needs to pause your graphics driver. Okay, we don't have a driver going, so yes. Hello? Hello? There's a plan B if it won't let me flash it while being the main display driver or adapter, is I can put the 3080 in, that's why it's on the table, have that be the main display, have this sitting in a secondary slot, and then just flash to that slot. So that'll work too. But clearly, it did not like trying to turn off a driver that wasn't present. So I'm just gonna flash it with it running and, you know, whatever. In fact, it probably isn't gonna flash now that I think about it. I'll probably have to do the second slot trick. Came back, that's a good sign. Hey. 2 boots in a row is a good sign. So I just saved everything to a folder called ZT BIOS Tools. In fact, I need to extract NVFlash. Okay, so we got a folder there. I'm gonna move the ROM file, which I renamed to ZT-ROM, into that file. Fun fact, if you wanna run a program from the location at which it's in, you can open up command prompt, run as administrator. You can click up here and just be like, boop, control copy. And then you come over here to the command prompt and be like CD, and then, oops, control V. Now we're in that location. CLS to clear. See, now we just immediately went right to Tethbenth desktop, ZT BIOS Tools, NVFlash 5.7.5. So let's just see what happens if I try and flash it. Okay, so I was going through some NVFlash stuff here and it wasn't working. In fact, you guys might have even caught my error, is I downloaded, so if I go back to my search, so you can see Zotac 780 Ti AMP BIOS, and when I said VGA BIOS collection, and I downloaded it, it's not the Ti. So let me show you what happens if you try and download and install a BIOS utility, or I'm sorry, a BIOS on the wrong graphics card. So NVFlash ZT-ROM.ROM. Oh, wait, not COM, ROM. Look, it immediately comes back and says, exception caught. Nothing has changed, GPU mismatch. And I was like, what the heck? I know there's usually a sub ID mismatch and stuff, and you can overwrite that. And then I realized, oh crap, that's the 780 BIOS, not a 780 Ti BIOS. So NVFlash, you know, didn't allow us to overwrite it, which is good. So now I've actually downloaded the correct BIOS. We'll get rid of that ZT-ROM, we don't need that anymore. So this is the BIOS that I downloaded right here. We'll paste it here. And what I did was I opened up GPU-Z, or I closed it on accident because I'm an idiot. And then I looked at the BIOS version that we have here, because I feel like we have a corrupt BIOS. But it gives our version, like we already showed, 8080-34001D. So then I just went over here to the VGA BIOS collection and I drilled down. So GPU brand, NVIDIA, card vendor, Zotac, card model, 780 Ti, BIOS version. And here it is right here, 8080-34001D. Boom. So there's the correct BIOS, had I done this properly. So now let's just see if it will, I'm gonna rename this, like I said, ZT-ROM, because Zotac ROM, right? So now let's go ahead and run it again, ZT-ROM.ROM. Is that the right format? Hey, it found the EEPROM. Do you want to flash it? Yes. That was very fast. I'm not sure that was, what? Okay, I feel like that was a little too fast. So, version with this version, yes. God, that was really fast. But, let's go ahead and just restart it right now. So all I did was flash it with the exact same BIOS that was on there. What I might do, because normally you'll see that little progress bar kind of, not just be done. So I'm concerned it didn't really flash it. Okay, so we just had a restart lockup after the BIOS flash. So now it should restart without an image, exactly like we saw before. Now if I do a power cycle, let it shut down, turn back on, we should get an image without a driver. So my next step is I'm gonna try another BIOS from that same card. Because I almost feel like it was like, oh, that's the same BIOS. We don't need to flash that. Because see, now there's no driver loaded. Because Windows at least intelligently recognized like, hey, graphics didn't initialize. So just roll back the basic VGA driver. Don't run the NVIDIA stuff. See, no NVIDIA driver showing right there. So now I want to go back to that BIOS again. Okay, so that doesn't show us a subset mismatch or anything like that. Yes. See? Now it's writing. I called it last time. I said, I don't think it's writing it, because it was just like you usually see the progress. So now we're truly writing onto the EEPROM. I really feel like it went, hey, that BIOS is already on here. Why are we doing this? Which I do believe that there's a command that you can enter in NV Flash that forces a rewrite, even if it matches. But now it's verifying, look, firmware image updated. We went from a 1D to 115, old to new. Info ROM image updated, old version NA. Remember how we didn't see our memory amount or memory speed or any of that stuff? None of that showed up. Look, we went from an NA, from info ROM, which is important for the driver to know, hey, what are you? What are you? Tell me. The info ROM is supposed to say, hey, this is what I am. If the info ROM just goes, what? How's the driver supposed to know what to do with it, right? You have to let the driver know what the graphics card is, and that's part of the prompt. So our info ROM is now written, 2083.0030.00.01. So now let's just do a restart. Let's see what happens. I got my fingers crossed. I got my fingers crossed, my arms crossed, my eyes crossed, and my legs are crossed. Oh. Oh, it just did it again. The only other thing I can try is doing a full DDU driver wipe on this, because maybe the current driver for some reason is being odd. It's the last thing I have in my toolbox, is now a full DDU driver wipe. On Nick's suggestion, let's see if anything looks any different in GPU-Z. Memory size still shows 0. So they got rid of the option to be able to hold an F key or F5 to get into safe mode when you restart. So now if you want to restart, you've got to go to power settings, click restart, left shift, restart, hold it down. I technically let go now, but I always hold it longer just in case. This will then bring up the menu so that you can actually choose startup mode, which would be safe mode. Then you use DDR in safe mode, or DDU in safe mode. Troubleshoot, startup settings. And then from there, we can go into debug mode and stuff, which is safe mode. I don't know why they bury it. It's like they really just don't want people going into safe mode. I don't understand it. There we go. So enter debugging for enable safe mode. Look at these lines. You see these red lines? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they show up on camera. Those. Oh wow, I'm starting to wonder if we have some sort of a memory problem with this card. Look at all these red lines. Holy cow, look at that. They disappear and appear. Crazy. I've never seen this before. This card might have a physical problem then. So this system has had AMD drivers on it as well because of the fact that this is our test bench. It's got nastiness on top of nastiness in terms of drivers and registry and such. But when this is done, we will then do NVIDIA after that, and then we'll go ahead and try a driver install. I'll try and actually download and install a driver with the card. All right, so DDU is done, and I'm just gonna try a restart. So on the first restart is usually where it tries to initialize the driver. There's no driver. So it should initialize just fine. Okay, this is expected behavior. And I download the driver for the 7. Oh, those lines are there, look. Did I just never notice these before? Yeah. Okay. Yep, I never noticed these lines before. Holy cow, I guess I'm just blind. There's not gonna be any bringing this card back. I'm almost positive we have a corrupt memory module in there somewhere, which is causing this. We clearly have a memory problem. I'm gonna download the driver anyway. So yeah, I didn't even try and install the driver. The driver like auto ran and it crashed the second I tried to run the driver. This is a card that clearly has too much physical damage. It's still odd though that the system the info said NA on the driver. That's still weird to me. It actually completely locked up the system. Even our little CPU meter is no longer moving. So I feel like this was an issue worth talking about, at least showing my steps for trying to recover a card like this, because I've had people actually describe this exact scenario to me where they send me an email or a message asking if I can help them figure out what's wrong with their system, because they'll have something that will load just like this, and then as soon as they go into the operating system, it completely crashes, like this one probably will. Although technically there's no driver installed right now, so it shouldn't. Oh, they just did it again. So you know what I think just happened? I think Windows auto-installed the driver in the background before I got that driver running, which is why it crashed, because it tried to initialize the driver. Can't win them all, but at least I took you guys along for the ride of what I would do to try and fix a problem like this. This one I figured was more of a BIOS, so that's why I started there. Typically I'd recommend starting with DDU. You'd be surprised what DDU can actually do in terms of fixing weirdness happening with your systems in terms of anything related to video. Dead DisplayPort, which is not something that Brian mentioned, so we found that one out right on the start. And then those lines and the fact that the memory still shows 0 on the capacity, there's something clearly wrong with either the memory controller or memory module itself or some sort of power delivery to the memory. But that's that. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you want to see more troubleshooting stuff, we'll probably do quite a bit of that this month, considering we are doing the 31 days of Jtober, which means we got to find content to fill for 31 days in a row. So we've got a lot of opportunity to do more troubleshooting stuff like this, more fixes, mods, reviews, builds, all that sort of stuff happening this month. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of it. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. We'll hang this one on the wall with the others.